Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Zero Access Footy, episode number 10. We have officially hit double digits, and I am once again joined alongside Behm Gaddy, otherwise known as the Premiership Quarter, who I've heard is going to be uploading videos very soon.
No.
What?
I'm joking.
No, I was going to say, you've been so back and forth on it, but I'm very excited
Yeah.
to hear your insight, because the insight you get over on this podcast is fantastic.
Are you
Frankly.
sure about that?
It's the Behm Tribunal Task is a world-leading segment in its field.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
Are you sure?
Okay, whatever. We are here once again for another week of footy discussion. We talk about how we just can't seem to get an angle as to who's going to be good this year and who isn't. It's a very, very strange year so far to start, but it's all going to be talked about, and I'm very excited to see what we can kind of get out of this one and what our next week looks like in terms of AFL footy. But once again, if you guys enjoy what you see here today, leave a like on the video and subscribe to Zero Access Footy if you haven't already. Be sure to go and follow us over on Instagram as well as TikTok. We do all of it over there as well. And if you can't watch us, you can surely listen to us over on Spotify. Be sure to rate us 5 stars over there if you decide to go and listen to us over there. But
Please do.
of course, nonetheless, let's have
We'll
a
force
look.
you to.
How are we doing that?
I don't know. Good question. But
Fantastic question.
through Rhys's
We'll answer it next week.
Through Rhys's 6-hour streams.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm going to be looking rough for the rest of this podcast. But let's have a look at the ladder. We currently have just the 2 teams on 6 wins. We have ourselves, the glare is awful. We have Collingwood and Brisbane up there in 6 wins, 1 loss. No invincibles, of course, this season.
Mm-hmm.
Gold Coast not far off. They should be invincible, as we mentioned before.
Yes.
Hawthorn at 5-2. They have snuck back up after being 7th last week.
And then we've got a bucket load of teams on 4 wins and 3 losses.
Oh,
You've got
yeah.
how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 teams.
Yeah, and
That's crazy.
they all look like they could fight. Especially and now we're seeing 11 in Carlton fighting for that top 8 spot as well.
Mm-hmm. As I predicted.
Yep, I didn't expect it, but here they are. We've got Adelaide in 5th, GWS 6th, 7th Geelong, 8th the Dogs.
Been fantastic. The doggies.
Absolutely. Freo in 9th, Port in 10th. And we mentioned Carlton 11th and Essendon sneaking their way in at 12. One thing to point out is that neither of our teams are noticed in this. I mean, mine, obviously, but yours have been playing all right so far, and now they find themselves 2 losses on the trot.
I take 3 and 4 every day of the week. I don't really care.
It's a St Kilda kind of stat, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the big mover so far is Hawthorn. Freo, Carlton. Freo sitting in 9th now. 4 wins out of their last 5 games. Of course, they'd love to have made it 5 with that loss to Melbourne, but that's just the way this AFL season has gone so far.
Correct.
Is every game that you think is going to go a certain way, you have to second guess because it can switch up.
Yep.
It's the any given game day type of scenario we've got this year. So
every team has had their down week.
absolutely.
So-
And for some, they've had more down weeks than others.
You've had, 5 straight?
5 straight down weeks. To be fair, Port probably wasn't a down week per se, but we still lost.
Exactly.
I think it was a down week for both teams, to be fair.
Yeah.
Let's have a look now at the total review. Obviously, this is the matchups that we kind of touched on just then, but let's go into depth. I had gone the Tigers in this
By
Thursday
7.
night.
I went Demon by 26.
Yeah, your tips are just so on point this year. It's frustrating me.
No, they're not. I'm being absolutely useless this year in tips.
You've been better than me. You've been so much better
That's
than
because
me.
you're like down all
thanks.
the way.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, awesome. Cheers.
It's like
Appreciate that.
Going to your grave already.
Tigers
You're about
not
3 feet
getting the
down.
win, as I would have liked. But D's taking that one. They just looked so much more smarter, I think is the way I can put it. Because Richmond, I think, outworked them 100%. But Richmond would do things that you can tell younger, less experienced sides do, right? Like in the first quarter, one thing that was so obvious is they kept kicking it down the line to Max Gawn's vicinity. And it's credit to Max Gawn's read of the play and positioning. But you'd think they'd try and switch it up, or at least make an attempt. And it just felt like they never did to start that game.
It's got to be frustrating.
But their pressure was fantastic, as it usually seems to be for these young Richmond players. Hence why the margin's only 20 points. But I think, like I said, skill, experience, knowing how to run the game. And, it's a game that takes a lot of twists and turns. And I think Melbourne navigated that much better than Richmond did. But that's not due to Richmond being a bad team. I think that's due to inexperience.
And also, Melbourne got it out to a 40-point margin.
Yeah.
And they rested Gawn for the last 10, 15 minutes, and that's when Richmond made their little comeback. But for Richmond, that's all you want to see. You just want to see some fight. You're not going to be winning every week. You're not going to be competing in a lot of weeks. But when you are, make sure that you're not getting blown out consistently. Like from North Melbourne, obviously, it's going to be a pretty similar process in terms of years down the bottom of the ladder. Maybe not as long as you guys, because you guys weren't able to get as many picks as they did. But there's going to be a lot of hard times for Richmond in the future. And so banking these really good performances will obviously help the fans focus that there's a lot of talent still coming through and a lot of promise on this list already.
Yeah, absolutely. We move on now to Pies versus Bombers. This was our game of the week, being the Anzac Day clash.
Yeah.
It kind of went how we expected.
Yeah, the margin probably didn't represent how close of a game I thought it was, at least how it was played out. Thought Essendon were maybe 3 goals worse than Collingwood on the day, but it's just a tough loss for them because they'd won a couple in a row. They'd got some really good form. Their defense had really started to work together really strongly. And then, yeah, it's probably the best team in the competition at the moment. But on a big day, I would have liked to have seen a bit more coaching prowess from Brad
Scott special, baby.
Yeah.
Brad Scott special of not knowing how to readjust whatsoever.
Yeah. Like, they had their plan of going with Durham to Dacos, and then a simple switch of moving Dacos to the half-forward flank just completely killed it.
Yep.
Like, surely you think, okay, maybe we want to put Perkins to him. Maybe he'll be able to go with him and get forward of the ball from him and make sure he works defensively so that he doesn't provide the same offensive movement that he does forward for Collingwood, which is a huge part of their transition game. But it just wasn't there.
Sometimes I feel like coaches get way too stuck up in the idea of we want to play our way. We want to play our game plan so that when the game plan on the other side switches to a way that disadvantages their original game plan, they just go, no, stick with our guns. We're not gonna move to what they do.
Yeah.
But you saw it immediately almost kind of make the Pies realise, all right, they're not going to be doing too much. They're not going to be doing too much to try and stop this.
In the first quarter, Dacos had, I think, 3 shots at goal. Kicked one of them, and then the other 2 missed. But, like, you cannot allow a player of that quality the amount of time forward of the ball he did.
Yeah.
I read a stat that he had the most amount of uncontested possessions, I think top 3 maybe, of his career in the forward half.
That's nuts.
Uncontested
in
possessions
forward halves.
in forward half.
Yeah.
So they clearly didn't have a game plan for him. And something that I was really annoyed with is there was no Darcy Moore, obviously, with the head clash from last week, where he was having issues with vertigo throughout the week.
Yeah.
And Peter Wright kicked 6 goals last week on Jeremy McGovern, a very good defender in his own right. They weren't able to utilise him whatsoever to that same effect that he did last week. And I thought, against Billy Frampton, against the Pies defence that don't have their captain out there, you can go for it. They got Langford back as well, and they just weren't able to capitalise on it whatsoever.
I think Essendon, they showed the fight at times. They just got run over the top of, as Collingwood seems to have been doing to a lot of teams this season. So maybe not as much kind of bashing of Essendon as I know that you would like. But in terms of just general evaluation, you can't really fault Bombers terribly because I think a lot of teams are going to be like this against Collingwood.
Yep.
We'll move on. Dockers beating the Crows. This one just felt like, because I watched a fair bit of it, this one just felt like the Dockers were always one step ahead.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I know Riley Thilthorpe had some times where he had a hand issue.
Yeah, he injured it in the late end of the third quarter. It looks to be a hairline fracture of his hand.
Yep.
From what I read. We had differing views in this game. I had the Dockers winning by 19 and you had the Crows winning by 15. I was basically spot on.
I hate you. Tips make me very feral, but Dockers surprisingly just. Oh God, that was really bad. That was all right.
Yeah, you can tell me about that.
Fair play. Dockers beating the Crows. This one, like I said, they felt one step ahead of them the entire game. It felt like the Crows could always make a step forward.
Yeah,
but the Dockers would squash it, and this is kind of what people expected from the Dockers from the beginning.
Correct.
I didn't expect it from this game, which honestly is a little shocking because I know I had a lot of faith in the Dockers. Brayshaw had a fantastic game.
Fantastic.
Sarong, I don't think he hit his ceiling, but he definitely was way above his floor, and his floor is pretty good. So that midfield was fighting hard. Hayden Young was doing his own effective ball use.
Yeah, they've been using him more so, especially last year, as a forward half player because he is so damaging with his foot.
Yeah.
And again, they did it this week. He was isolated a fair few times in the forward 50. And because he's so smart, he's so damaging with his foot, he just provides a difficult matchup for any player that he goes against. And I felt like for Adelaide, the midfield for Fremantle was able to get on top quite clearly. And Jordan Dawson really didn't stand up as captain of this team. I think he has been on and off this year to start, but his disposal by foot has been really, really poor. I think he's kicking at maybe 50%, 55% for the year.
Which is not what you hope for one of your highest ball users.
No. And when they rely on that to be able to get good ball delivery to their key forwards, then obviously it's going to struggle. Like Fogarty wasn't there this week, and so Dan Curtin had to play a bigger role. And assuming Fogarty's back next week, he'll probably have to replace Thilthorpe, because I dare say he won't be playing with a hairline fracture. And when they don't have all three key forwards there, it's very much, if that backline is not locking down as well as possible, they really struggle to play.
Yeah.
Because they rely on their forward trio so heavily.
I'm very shocked by how much they are reliant on their forward line this year.
Yep.
Really, really shocked because they've got talent elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to move on. Saints beaten by the Lions by a considerable margin. Did you watch this one?
I was there, and it was almost identical to the Bulldogs game last week, to be honest. But they just kicked in inaccurately, whereas the Bulldogs were able to take their chances. It's the exact same thing. Like Brisbane, really good team. St Kilda, horrible midfield. Aside from that, not really much to say.
I know you've talked a lot about Jack Steele. Did he get much midfield minutes?
He was better. He was able to get the ball. He just could not use it. So
that's always a positive, I guess, when you can get the ball.
I mean, we both had Lions who winning. I had by 5 goals. You had by almost 60 points. So pretty much in the middle there.
Yeah, surprisingly quite close. Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised by that. All right, well, considering you kind of have an idea as to how that game went, I didn't get to see too much of it, but
you didn't miss anything.
Yeah,
not at all.
Nothing special from what it sounds like.
The only thing
this sounds like a regular, a basic Lions win and a basic Saints loss.
Yeah, the only thing I'll note is we were down by 38 points at halftime. We'd kicked the first 3 goals of the second half, and we had 3 straight centre clearances, which we didn't do for the rest of the game. Like barely had any centre clearances at all.
Like a glimpse of what could be.
Yeah, and then they got 4 free kicks in a row. 3 of them led to goals.
Fantastic.
So our comeback just got absolutely shut on by umpires. There was no option for us to be able to get back in the game.
Oh, it's always the umpire's fault.
Oh, shut up. It literally was. They got 7 goals from free kicks.
Adelaide defeated North Melbourne by just 9 points.
Mm-hmm. You had no faith. You had Power winning by 60.
Yeah.
I had Power winning by 7. Spot on it again.
I don't know how you keep finding ways to make this.
I've had 3 out of the first 5 games absolutely spot on.
Be within a goal, yeah. Like, I'm honestly more surprised by the fact that Port came out so bad.
Yeah.
If they weren't playing North, maybe if they played West Coast, they'd have a win. But if they played anyone else, this would be a loss to Port and an embarrassing loss to Port Adelaide.
Yeah.
It was honestly embarrassing on both sides. They both looked very rough.
They started really slowly, but then as the quarter went on, they were able to just capitalise. I think they kicked 4 goals from 9 inside 50s.
Yeah.
That's horrible defence after dropping, Aiden Core and Griffin Logue.
But at the same time, I don't know whether that was a bad choice at the moment.
Really?
I really don't. Honestly, my biggest fear in that back line is Charlie Comben.
Okay.
Because he does many little things that do very much frustrate me. He's absolutely a hard worker, and I'll never take that away from him. I'm just glad that he works so hard. He knows how much he is needed in that back line because there's not much backing him up.
Yeah.
But there'll be things that he'll do, like he'll in a contest he'll punch a ball straight to his opposition in a spoil. And I understand sometimes that it's hard to manipulate those ones, but maybe it's just as he gets better and as he gets more games into him. But it's very, very tough as a North fan to say, let's give the back line some more time when it's consistently being the reason we lose these games.
It is pretty much his full first-time season as a key defender as well, though.
I know.
So there's going to be a lot of growing pains.
And I've seen, like, even Aiden Core, Like
He does it
and
too.
he still does it, but not as much as he did when he first came to the club. He was literally I called him a caveman because he had like either punch or kick. That was all he did. Like it felt like his brain didn't go any further than like where am I going to kick this? How am I going to spoil this? It just went punch, kick.
Bit
That's
rich
all.
coming from you right now.
Shut up.
you
I look a
haven't-
little rough, but not caveman rough.
If you haven't seen, you should have checked out Northy's AFL story on his Instagram page
my
because that
God.
was proper caveman.
Yeah.
That was proper caveman.
Well, it won't be there now, but yeah,
Re-upload
it was
please.
rough. We'll move on though because I
Yeah,
don't think Port
North
fans will
suck.
want to hear about
Yeah.
their game either. It was a
No.
pretty basic one.
Yeah.
Giants beaten by the Dogs.
Neither of us had this.
Yeah.
At all.
I am quite surprised. I thought, and funny enough, the stat that we found out, or I
Yeah.
found out at least, was that the Giants have actually lost their last, or they've lost 5 out of the 7 matchups at Manuka Oval to the Dogs. They are
Wow.
not as dominant against the Dogs at Manuka Oval than we thought. So
Okay.
this maybe wasn't as obvious
No.
as we originally thought it out to be. But the Dogs just came out and they played so cleanly.
Very
They
much
they
so.
looked almost a different tier above the Giants, and that's crazy. That's crazy considering
Yeah.
the personnel in that team. At the moment, they don't have obviously the Waitman and the Darcy, probably the biggest
Treloar.
one. Treloar, sorry, I'm missing Treloar.
Mhm.
But the some of the players who stepped up, James Harms with 4.
Yep. That
James
was no
Harms
one would have guessed that at all.
It was incredible this game.
Yep.
Then the likes of Fraser,
He's continued
he
to
is
perform
ridiculously
really
clean.
well. Yep.
Like if you remember watching that game, like a hand pass off as he's being tackled, everyone like in the immediate moment looks like a throw, but he somehow in the replays you see him get a hand to a hand pass, and it's all clean. It's all beautiful. I don't know how he's doing it at this rate.
When you're
And he's
able to-
learning so quickly.
Yeah.
The commentators are calling him right foot Bond.
Yeah, when you're able to learn under Bont, Treloar, Libba, Dale, McRae,
He does have a great group of guys to
there's
learn
no
under.
one better, like in the AFL, in terms of who are you going to look up to. That's who you're going to be able to perform with. Like,
Yeah.
imagine having that type of level of talent in the midfield.
Yeah.
Bont, Richards, Libba, and then Fraser and Kennedy now as the 2 outside. Like, it's just an insane amount.
Kennedy also having a fantastic season.
Yeah,
so far.
he's been a fantastic recruit.
Couple of goals. He's done a couple of goals in a few games now,
Yeah.
which was very hard to see happening at Carlton.
Yeah.
But
There
on the other side of things, I
Yeah.
want to point out,
Giants.
inaccurate is one thing I can mention. I wouldn't say not as clean.
Well,
I think there's still a lot of clean play happening from the Giants. I just think their pressure wasn't as high as the Dogs. The Giants seemed to not be able to capitalize as much as the Dogs could as well. I think Stringer is now a clear-cut example. I don't know if he's still at this point, but he at one point is 3 goals 12 on the season. Not
And guess who
what
those
you
2
want
goals
from a
were
pickup.
against?
Probably no. I was gonna say North. No, it's against Saints, isn't it? Yeah, they haven't played North, but Dogs. Yeah, they just looks like a tier above, which is rare.
Yeah.
I think for me to say about the Dogs.
Well,
They're
for-
very much a 50-50 team.
For a
and
team
they
that we
did look
both
really
thought
good.
were going to be a 50-50 team, to be able to go into a team that is looking to contend for top 4, go into their home ground and beat them by 5 goals is a fantastic performance.
Yep.
Obviously, they had to shuffle some players around. Jed Bustlinger got his debut, which I've been asking for weeks.
And he looked all right.
He looked very
He had some
comfortable down
shaky
back.
moments, but I think
First
overall,
game, you always do.
yeah, he looked. I think for a first gamer, looked real and got involved.
Correct.
That's what you'd hope for.
Yeah.
He got involved with the play. So very, very good signs for Dogs fans to
Yeah.
to see his
And
performance.
the one thing they can bank off this is that Tim English can now use this as the game to get back into form, get back into that 2023 form that he hasn't been able to hit since.
Yeah. We're going to move on. Suns defeating the Swans. I think we
This
both
was such
saw.
an interesting game.
I didn't get to watch it. I'll
They-
let you kind of take this.
So
one.
I was watching part of it through the first half. I watched the second half, but it started off that Sydney were a lot cleaner. Their midfield was really getting on top. They were able to tag both Rao and Anderson out of the game, and they were able to get to a 5-goal lead halfway through the second quarter. And whilst Gold Coast kicked a couple goals late, you were like, Sydney really have this in their hands. Their system was running right around Gold Coast, and they were just able to be a lot more cleaner inside 50. Right, Heaney was on top. Warner had a couple really impressive goals, But then after half time, they were just nowhere to be seen. They kicked 1 point until halfway through the fourth quarter, from halfway through the second quarter. So in a half of football, basically, they kicked 1 point. You know how much Gold Coast scored in that time?
50.
I think 72 points or something insane.
Man, crazy.
I think they kicked 13 goals straight or something outrageous.
Oh my God. That's
so
ridiculous.
They just turned it on, and Sydney could not go with them. And a big proponent of that was a couple of their crits. I thought John Noble was really strong, but Daniel Rioli, this was the game. He just won them 4 points in the end. He was really strong. He was able to be clean. He was able to hit targets. And in the forward line, they were just able to be a lot more effective. Against a shorter Sydney team, they were able to use their tools much more effectively than they did last week against Richmond. And that's sort of what won them the game. Just kicking accurately and being able to have a huge stretch of play that just wiped Sydney off the floor completely. Like, I had Gold Coast winning by 42. You had them winning by 35. It was right in the middle. So we basically got that spot on.
Yeah, very nice.
Let's go.
No. I'm not letting you do it to me again. Blues beating the Cats.
Yeah.
Now, I had mentioned in a previous episode my passing grade for these guys is to make it competitive.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just do that. They bloody won the thing.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the Blues?
Guess who predicted that?
Yeah, you did.
I had the Blues by 13.
I don't
and
know
you guys
how
had, you had the Cats by 20. You're an idiot.
I don't know how you keep getting this.
Buffoon.
I'm not an idiot, I'd say.
Yeah, you are.
They had just beaten North and West Coast.
You got to look more into it, mate.
Oh my
Coming
God.
off a big win, Geelong were always going to have a bit of a down game. Always. This is just how it works. And Carlton, they got their form back going. You could, not necessarily against who they were going against, but how they were going. The way they were playing, their offense and their defense was a lot better than their results in the first 4 weeks. They just could not kick accurately, and they didn't have their two key forwards. Because, my God, Harry Mackay was fantastic against Geelong.
They needed this.
He was so dominant in the air. Him and Kerno were so difficult to be able to guard, and then allowed their smalls to be able to just play with freedom. Like, Corey Durden's been great. Lockie Fogarty's been a huge pressure forward. Jesse Motlop's now being able to be played in the midfield at times because they've got those physical bodies in there. And I mentioned this in the preview. I mentioned that Geelong are an outside midfield. They want to be able to get the ball and run. And I said, Carlton's midfield is the absolute antithesis of this. They are a huge contested side, and they are going to absolutely dog them in the middle. And that's what they did. Hewitt, Chera, Walsh when he was in there, Cripps when he was in there. They had to put Dangerfield in there at the end of the first quarter. And even after that, they were still up until the last quarter. They whacked them in the centre bounce and through clearances just in general up until the last quarter, where I think Geelong won 10-1. So that's where the game was won. The one thing I want to say for Carlton, Nick Haynes, again, won them 4 points. He was superb. I think he took 12 or 13 marks. 8 of them were intercept marks.
What the hell is going on with Carlton?
I know.
They've completely flipped the script.
Yeah, okay. 4 shit losses. West Coast and North Melbourne. Yay. Geelong?
Yeah,
Excuse me?
This is such an like the complete opposite of their round one matchup. And you know, it's definitely needed, but man, it just makes you ask, what could this team actually be looking like if they just won the games they should have? It really is. Like, when you miss opportunities, and it feels like every team has missed opportunities, so maybe it all evens itself out, but
they could easily
like
be
every
6-1.
team. There are some teams that could be still undefeated. There are some teams who could be in the top 4. Like, Carlton is one of those teams. Richmond is an absolutely understandable one that could be switched around. What other games that have they lost that they could have won?
Well, they could have potentially beaten Hawthorn. They should have beat the Dogs. There were definitely a couple games there. I don't think they were better than Collingwood.
So it makes you rethink, what does this team look like now? And I'm glad that I managed to talk about them before this turnaround. Right? Their win against West Coast, I felt like we all knew was coming. North,
pretty expected.
Could have been pretty expected, but could have been a test. I think a lot of people, it was still in the time where we were near that Melbourne win. But yeah, that Geelong win is 100%. Carlton look more like themselves now. They're playing the way they should be. Let's move on. We don't really need to talk about this one too much. Hawks defeating Eagles.
There were a couple of interesting things that you saw.
Barascott moved forward.
Barascott moved forward because Oscar Allen was back.
Yeah.
That's why. I heard something funny that someone said the only reason Barascott moved forward is to be able to talk to Oscar Allen and convince him to go to Hawthorn. I saw that and that was very funny.
That is so good.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Yeah.
Man, I just hope that's true because that'd be so funny.
It's very, like, For the Eagles, this game, they just moved some plays around. Like, as I mentioned, Allen in the back line, Brady Hoff was in the midfield. Liam Baker was put back to half back. There was just some changes that I thought, okay, let's look at how it goes. And there was some okay things, but again, if Hawthorn kicked accurately early, this could have been a lot worse than what it was.
Absolutely. That is our total round 7 review, but we're now going to have a look at my man of the week. As usual, I do my 1, 2, 3 votes.
Man.
I always like to. I'm glad you're so excited. I always, with my man of the week, like to try and give everyone, even those who may not have like on paper the biggest performances, but I try to give those ones who have themselves a bit of an outlier week. I try to give them their, I guess their flowers. But usually my 1 vote goes to who I think is the best.
Okay.
In this case, we've got for 1 vote, I've got written here Lloyd Milk. That's a bit of a throwback now at this point. Lloyd Milk is the 3 votes, 58 hitouts. Obviously,
is he the 1 vote or the 3 vote?
Sorry, the 1 vote.
Okay.
So he is the 3rd best. 58 hitouts, even though it was against West Coast, very impactful. Did his job to a T.
Yep.
And I think it's definitely out and worth pointing out. We've got in 2 votes. I went James Harms. He was just I could not notice him when watching that game. He kicked the 4. I think that's tied career best for him. And just overall so impactful when he got his opportunities. And when you're up against teams like GWS, you just need players like that to step up. And he didn't just step up. He arguably had Brownlow votes that game. And then number 1, maybe a bit of a cheat considering who was up against, but I've gone Max Gawn.
Okay.
Really big game overall. Again, like you said, they sat it out.
Nang, so it's not against.
It's not against no one. Let's be honest. But at the same time, like I mentioned, the way that Richmond played definitely played into his hand. But he had to go out and do what he did. He's finally starting to find some form. Is what I'm liking the most about this. Gawn, to start the season, looked really shaky. But now, last 2 games, he's looked very solid. Looked very solid. And this game was probably the height of his season so far. So that is my 3 votes.
Yep, fair enough. I was checking the Supercoach at half-time, 3/4 time. He was on 150 at 3/4 time. And I'm like, this bloke is just insane.
Yeah, but I also think it's because of the way Richmond played.
Yeah,
Richmond just never seemed to clock that if we stop kicking it down the line to him, he won't keep intercepting it. That's just, it was very strange.
Okay.
But at the same time, he had to do what he had to do. His positioning is great. That's why he's always so dangerous with those long drive kicks. So very good. Max Gawn, congratulations. Macca's Man of the Week for week 7.
You get a large prize donated from Rhys McLaren himself.
Man, I hope he doesn't actually try and hit me up on that. That would be so.
If he hits you up, you're getting 6 chicken nuggets as well. Max
Gawn just sends Northie AFL a message on Instagram. I'm looking for 6. Can you upgrade that to a 10 nuggets? I'll give you a shout out after the game.
I can't have the calories. It needs to be a small fries.
Oh my God. We have 0 access. That's never happening. Let's move on to...
Never say never.
We had touched on this during our review of round 7, but Carlton, really big win against Geelong. You had mentioned a few things off the beginning, and I almost want to try and go back to I think it was the week 8 documents that we had where I discussed where I want to see Carlton keep improving.
You did your little spiel to the camera.
Yeah, I did, and
it's pretty funny.
They're not only doing exactly what I wanted them to, they're exceeding that.
Yeah,
because one of those big things was show a full game effort against Geelong, not win, show a full game effort. That was that, and maybe the injuries, them having Mackay back helps them out a bit more, but they looked better in every facet. We've talked about, I think one of our big things was Nick Haynes at the start of the season because it was just unbelievable what we were seeing and how poor he was playing. But like you said, fantastic from him. He was one I didn't mention, but I didn't think he was going to play that much of an impact, honestly. I didn't even see him playing at this point. I thought his poor form would see him out of the team.
Jeez, that's bad.
But to his credit, he has smashed it. Hewitt has continued to do really well. Sam Walsh is not necessarily shining, But
he had a couple good games, but
exactly.
he just needs to continue that. Like it was against North that he had 37 and 3 goals.
He had the 37 and 3, but Sam Walsh has had too much of his time or too much of his games where he's almost tried too hard to get possessions that just aren't there.
Okay. Yep.
So he would get himself into lots of contact and lots of contested possessions and come out unsuccessful.
Okay.
And so it's good to see that he's finally getting those touches he's looking for. Because there is some times where you need to play smarter, not harder.
Yeah. Okay.
But
that's fair.
I said that I wanted him to keep getting those contested possessions, and you had rightfully mentioned that contested possessions don't mean they have to be super contested when they make the possession. But he's still getting in and underneath them, and I think that's where Sam Walsh needs to really cut his craft. Sam Walsh, if he can continue to be one of those rough and tumble players, gets himself underneath it, you always know that he's going to be one that goes for it, but not in a way that feels like completely out of the blue or wasting or with wasted energy. It needs to be times where, it's those 1%ers, right? Coaches always, especially in younger levels that I remember, but when you move into those higher professional levels, those 1%ers really matter because they actually decide how plays follow up. And I think Sam Walsh really needs to cut his craft there.
Okay.
Paddy Cripps was fantastic in that game against Geelong. And I think he was moved forward at some points.
He's playing almost split 50-50 forward and
honestly,
midfield.
that's kind of how I like it. I said, see how impactful he really is down forward. Very, very impactful.
Yeah, you've got that spot
and it's so nice with having Kerno and Mackay there, just as long as they aren't putting him in the ruck. And from what I saw, he had no hit outs. He wasn't putting in the ruck.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vossi. You may keep your job. That's probably the big question though now for me is his seat still hot? I'd say yes.
Vossi's, it's still hot. Problem is, teams always go on 3 to 5 game stretches where they're either good or either bad. And we've seen it in every year that has been there where they've had some really good patches and then some really poor patches. So some really good coaching moves, which we haven't seen before. A lot of it's just been play performance has been up and down. Now we're seeing some really good coaching moves. And that's sort of what's giving me more confidence that he'll be able to perform. Will get this team to perform at this level more consistently.
You can't blame him for giving it a go.
No.
I think that's what most, at least fan bases, I'd imagine, they want to see people at least try to work it out rather than stick so hard with their guns that it bashes them and affects them negatively. Carlton, fantastic. I did not expect this in the slightest. I know you did and tipped correctly, but I thought we were going to see the version of Carlton that crumbles under pressure. Yeah. And they did not. They stood up to the occasion.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a couple of things I want to touch on. I mentioned this a few weeks ago when we talked about Carlton, that some of their key position players, where I was talking about Kemp, I was talking about Silvani, McGovern and Haynes, they just weren't able to find that form. And Silvani and Wiedering have been the number 3 and number 4 ranked key defenders all year. So it's very unfortunate that Silvani's now injured. He'll miss a couple of weeks. However, he has been absolutely fantastic. Wiedering was on Neil. Neil did nothing. And then I think McGovern and Silvani both played on Cameron at times. The other one would go to Dangerfield. And I thought whenever Silvani was on Cameron, he looked good. And whenever he was on Dangerfield, I felt like he wasn't able to be physical and impact the game as much. So a really good performance from those two all year. And then, as we saw, Haynes and McGovern on the weekend also looked really strong. They weren't fumbly and they were able to get the ball movement going. And that's really important to the game at the moment. That is where you score 60% of your entire total. And they've got that game back now.
Fantastic. Just good on Carlton. They're finally doing what we kind of expected them to do.
Yeah,
but
I would have guessed.
We'll move on now. We are going to go to a less positive story. Sydney.
Yeah. Stuck
this
at crossroads.
Is a very, very, I don't even know if it's unexpected, but a very, very bad situation now because they're losing. Look, I wouldn't say this is a game they expected to win, but they are losing games that they probably should be more competitive in.
Yeah, the competitiveness is a big issue. I'll get up their form now, fixture. But in terms of the performance, it just hasn't been there consistently for 4 quarters yet. And that's an issue. When you look at them last year, they were just able to blow teams out within a 20-minute patch, and they couldn't stick with them afterwards. They were able to be solid defensively, and they were able to really restrict everyone's ball movement, and they're not doing that anymore. Part of that will probably be coaching. Trying to find a new system is always difficult. You're always going to have growing pains. I've mentioned this for almost any team that has changes or is very young. Sydney is still quite young on the outside. Their Bulls are still quite old. You've got Rampy, you've got McCann, Melican, Heaney's in the midfield, Grundy's there. So they've still got a base that's really solid. However, the outside, you're looking at Mills, Papley, Goulden, a couple of their key forwards, Marty and McDonald. They're not there to provide that support that they need, and that's a really big problem.
Yeah. Sydney just so far have come off really, really unimpressive to me. Last year, a lot of teams would fear them coming against them. Now it feels like they have so many holes that Errol Goulden coming back is not going to patch.
No.
It's not going to patch. And you got to ask yourself, is this a grand final thing? Is this a identity thing? I know you mentioned that the new coach is finding a new identity and finding a new style and way to play the game. This feels a lot more than that, though. I feel like there's too many other factors that we can't ignore. And I'm very much one who believes in the idea that a grand final hoodoo can really affect you. You climb so far up the mountaintop. They finished minor premiers. They realistically had the easiest path and came up against Brisbane with 6th, right?
Brisbane 5th.
5th.
Yeah.
A team outside the top 4 in the grand final. And taking away all of the momentum they had and taking away all of that, on paper, they probably should have won that game. And they have fought so hard, been the best team all season, just to lose and crumbled right at the last hurdle.
Yeah, for the second time in
that
3
is
years.
that is a mental thing. And so I'm very much a proponent or a man who proposes the idea that while the game is played on the field, there's another game played in the heads. And I think in their heads right now, they are freaking out. They don't know what their identity is. They don't know how they are going to see improvement. And I don't think one player coming back, despite him being all-Australian caliber, potentially Brownlow caliber, just depending on how his career turns out, I just don't see him being back in the side as what turns this team around. And my hope for them is that Dean Cox is going to find their identity sooner rather than later, because this team has been used to one coach for so many years that I feel like this new coach, as much as I love Dean, especially back when he played for West Coast, I feel like he is not going to find a way at the moment. With the way they've been playing, it feels like there's just too many times where he hasn't been the guy to move the magnets in the right way. The run that Gold Coast went on, you said nearly 13 straight. I don't think it was 13. I think it was 12, 11 or 12. Either way, it doesn't matter. Lots of goals against him. Shows a clear sign that they hit a wall and they could not find their way around that wall. So I think there's a lot of diving to do into that team that we're going to find out very, very soon.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not going to be sacked a year after he's been given coach, but he will start to understand what the holes are the more this team goes around. So I think, obviously, before you make any big changes, wait to see what this team looks like with Goulden in, because they definitely can. I mean, they smashed North Melbourne, so they're not a bottom of the barrel side, but they are still on the outside looking in right now, which is a big drop off from where they were last year.
Yeah. This is going to be the most important off-season in Sydney's history, or arguably in the last 20 years.
I was going to say, I don't go that far, but yeah.
I think you look at how they're going to play with this new coach. They're going to need to find new players for this system. Some of the older players might not be fitting this Dean Cox system, and that's going to be a huge thing. Do you see your forward tall issues as a problem that you need to fix right now, or do you believe in the development of McDonald, McLean, and Amati together? Do you want to target a Jamari Ugle-Hagan? We've talked about it a lot, that this looks like his last year at the Bulldogs. Is that someone that you see can fix those issues? Do you still see the full back issues as another problem to fix? He's tried to play McCann forward, so he clearly knows there's forward issues. Does he now see back issues? Do you see a problem with the lockdown smalls that they don't really have? Look at Cunningham, he's over 30. Ben Patton's not a player that you want to see in your best 22. They've moved Sam Wicks there, but is he going to be a long-term replacement for that Cunningham role, there's still a lot of holes, as you mentioned, that you can't really make too much of a judgment right now because you don't have those players back until you see how this fits with those three prong tools and with Goulden, Mills, and Taylor Adams and whoever's there in the midfield. You can't really make too many judgments with a first-year coach until they're all there.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a very difficult off-season with some tough calls needed to be made in the off-season.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to our next subject, which is a bit of a cracker, bit of a funny one, this one.
You can lead this one.
So,
you can lead us.
I don't see, I mean, biased North Melbourne fan here, I don't see what his point is. Because realistically, 17th in score involvements? Yeah. Is that bad?
Well, first give some context to what he's talking about.
Yeah, you're right. Kane Cornes has coined a new term on the agenda setters the other night, in which he's called it Sheezy Ball, in the sense that you get a lot of possessions, but it does not impact on the scoreboard. So the score involvements are very, very low compared to the others up there, but at the same time, I don't think that's low. But Kane Cornes believes that this is bad enough to coin an entire term. I really think this is reaching, and it's funny that this has come right after their game against Port, in which they had a pretty fiery clash. I think a lot of people see it.
I wonder why he has gone so in depth into North Melbourne. Is it maybe because they played Port Adelaide?
Yeah, no, I think
no way.
This is like a very, very, and I think Kane often can do a good job hiding some bias. Yeah. Right? I think sometimes he can do it. This is not that, though. I feel like this is very much attacking a team that's gone after your team pretty hard, because it was a pretty fiery clash.
There were heaps of scuffles.
It was within 9 points. Obviously, the Jason Horne-Francis thing, I think a lot of people could have seen coming, but we knew there was something there.
Yes, but even not just that, there was a lot of talking with Jai Simpkin and all the players. There was a lot of back and forth in that game, and clearly they were targeting some of Port Adelaide players. And he was not very happy with that, clearly, if he's going to talk about Harry Sheezel.
Yeah, straight away. And I feel and no one was talking about this as well. This has just been brought up. And it was mentioned on the panel. I think it was Nick Rewald.
He was on the panel.
He was on the panel. He had mentioned that it was way too harsh, what this particular criticism, because as much as you can point out, I think Sheezel is 4th from the stats. He is 4th or 3rd in disposals.
4th in disposals.
4th in disposals for the season, and 17th in score involvements. That is not as big of a gap as he's making it out to be, especially when you're considering you're talking about the 17th place team. Realistically, 34 score involvements is pretty good.
No, it's very good.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to look at the teams at the top. Nick Dacos, Collingwood, Freo, they're making their way up. The Dogs, they're doing their thing. George Hewitt has been fantastic despite their struggles, and they're now starting to see some involvement and some higher scores. Jack McRae with a fantastic start to his season probably gave him that boost. Finn Callahan, we've talked about his improvements. Sarong, Brownlow contender. Neil, Brownlow contender. Wanganeen Miller, you love that man, and there's a pretty good reason why he is so much wanted by Adelaide teams. And Tom Green does Tom Green things, and he's just about level with Sheezel. He's 4 in front of Sheezel. 7 spots behind.
Jeez, that's pretty impressive.
So I don't really see a big problem. I think the ladder here is a bit misleading as to how 100%. Bad of a problem it is. Because
it's not like he's 50th in score involvement.
Yeah, no, you're right.
If you take one player from every team, he's still in the top 18. Right.
And he picked out a few clips of him bombing balls into the forward 50, and it just felt like a very, very strange.
He selected 2 clips where someone marked the ball from his kick. He's having impact.
This is a really weird thing to come after, and I think we can all tell as viewers of this that this is because of a certain bias.
Yes,
in the argument,
very clearly.
I don't think we need to touch too much more on it. I think it's very easy to see that this is just a headline grabber. This is one to drive clicks, and he got us. I guess he wins. Let's move on, though, to our headline grabber. This is the one that grabs headlines for Zero Access Footy. We got Behm's Tribunal Tasks, and you've got so much to go through this week.
It's a big week. It's a very, very big week. And we're starting with something from last week. We talked about it.
Yep.
It's the Connor Nash incident. This was graded as 4 weeks. We didn't know this because it was sent straight to the tribunal. We both agreed that this was a pretty clear 3-week incident.
Yeah.
That you had Jack Scrimshaw do something on Jordan Ridley, had Pat Voss do it to Nick Voston, and then this one as well. And then they graded it 4 weeks. Out of nowhere.
Is it the same, same grade, same description, or
no.
is it something more?
So he did not dispute the severity or impact, but argued for a 3-game suspension. So somehow they argued that it was the exact same grading as both the Voston and the Scrimshaw, but they gave it 4 weeks instead of 3, even though it was the same grading.
Did it get the same grading? Huh?
Yeah. So the only thing that I can take out of this was that you would think this is the result over the action, because obviously Voston didn't get concussed.
Which seems to be like a catchphrase for us now.
Yes, it is the theme of the MRO.
Yeah.
That it's a result over the action. But then you take a look at the Scrimshaw versus Ridley one, and Ridley gets concussed. And that also only got 3 weeks. So we thought there was parity, and now there's no longer parity.
Yeah.
I am just absolutely confused as to how this has been given 4 weeks. They even went to the tribunal and it still wasn't downgraded. So my mind is twisted about this. I genuinely am so confused. It was assessed as careless, severe, and high contact, which is the exact same as what got the 3 weeks. The only thing there that can really make an argument to be increased is the careless to intentional. But you cannot make that because the ball's right there.
Yeah.
And so you can argue he's making an attempt on the ball.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they've graded it 4 instead of 3 because it looks worse.
His hair flung back.
Yeah.
Great point. His hair flung back.
Yeah.
Like,
no, but he lies back. He's down for a bit. Like, that is a bad looking incident.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking because it doesn't look as bad, or it looks worse than the others, maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if that's an argument, but
it's not really.
But, like, I don't know
so
how they've
dumb.
upgraded it. That's all.
I got no idea.
I know what Jay Epstein would be thinking right now. It's Geelong getting the rub of the green.
Well, I mean, they're not even getting the rub of the green. Hawthorn are getting the brown of the green. The rub of the brown.
No, they're not. Move on to the next one. We are ending it there. That is an awful mentioning. That is disgusting.
Yes.
Behm. God.
The next one is Mitch Hinge. This was graded as intentional conduct, low impact, and high contact. High contact, sorry. I don't know why the brain doesn't work, but it doesn't always.
Classic.
This is very similar to the Adam Chara one that we'll talk about in a minute. But how many times have you seen a player go on to like jumper punch someone in a contest, in a game?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen it about 30 times. This one does clip him high, yes. But if you're going to do it again, action or result, don't allow players to jumper punch each other, and this won't happen.
Yeah.
Like he's clipped him in the bottom of the chin, and obviously it's a soft spot for Brayshaw given his history with those incidents. But it just happens too much to be able to just randomly pull this one and give it a week. And they found consistency doing both this one and the Chara one a week. But again, it's action over result. They're punishing the result because it was high, but not punching someone in the gut, and that's a week. That's where I see the difference.
Yeah.
I don't mind it being a week. I'm just saying this happens a lot more than what you've graded it as.
I understand that. I kind of see it as I'm happy with the 1 week off purely because, like, I think the small like shoves and the small like palm punches, whatever you want to call them, those are fine as long as you execute them well. If you are, I guess, uncoordinated enough to smack someone in the face, to smack someone in the face while you're trying to hit him in the chest, then you've got to deal with the consequences of your actions because you've put the risk of trying to put some physical punishment on them for tagging you or playing up on you, playing physical. You've tried to put that punishment on them for doing it, and you have done it wrong. You have done it incorrectly. I'm cool with a 1 week suspension for that.
I'm just very surprised that we've already had 2 intentional conduct reasonings when I felt like it's been years since we've had an intentional conduct.
Well, I'd argue I'd be cool. I'm cool with that being intentional because he's clearly going for impact. I think he obviously didn't intentionally mean to hit him in the face, so you could make that argument. But he's intentionally gone to hit him. You can argue that.
Correct. And there's another one that is intentional that's later down the line, which is the Ginnivan kicking issue. But if you look back at the Dan Houston one, where he basically just
Yeah,
elbows,
you could argue
whoever,
that's intentional.
how is that
too.
not intentional? But they've graded this as it just confuses me.
Yeah.
We know what confuses me, but they are very dumb. We do move on to the Adam Chera one though, which again, he punches him just in the chin again. Like it's very similar.
Very, very easy to argue the
Yeah.
same case.
Yep. So again, intentional low and high contact. It's the same thing.
Did he get a week?
He got a week.
Yeah.
So
I'm cool with that again.
they
Again,
have
it's the physical.
challenged it though. Carlton have challenged it, whereas Adelaide haven't.
It'll be interesting to see how they argue it because
Correct.
if Chera gets off, then you look at
The Hinge one.
the Hinge one and you look at Adelaide and you go, you've missed the chance there. And especially because they need backmen.
Yeah.
You've lost one of your backmen when you put it,
Correct.
and when you've been proven to have that action, like it's come off. And did Brayshaw go down?
Brayshaw, I don't think he went to ground, but he did like show that he got hit.
Yeah, I
hard.
was going to say he showed that he got hit. He could potentially have an argument. We've seen how result-based some of these things could be. He could have a better argument.
Very much.
He could
so.
have a better argument than
the-
Chera here. And if
The only
Chera gets
problem
off,
is Chera has better camera angles in his favor.
yeah,
Like the Brayshaw one, you can clearly see. the amount
yeah,
of
I get
contact.
that.
That's all.
So if Chera doesn't get off and he still keeps the week, then I mean, there's
I've
no
got no
real
issue
there's
with
no
it.
there's no
No.
issue. Yeah, I've got no issue with it either.
Yeah.
I think if you're dumb enough to be able to hit someone doing that when you're aiming for the chest, you probably need to serve the punishment
Yeah,
because you
100%.
have intentionally looked to hit them and you've gone and hit them in the face.
Yeah.
That's a week
Yeah.
at the least. If
Yes.
it's a punch, obviously different story. But they know how it goes. Your jumper punches, your shoves, whatever it is. They've just messed it up.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy with a week here too.
Now this is a very interesting one. This is a VFL incident.
Of course it is.
where maybe it's a St Kilda bias.
It
Maybe
is a
it's
St
not.
Kilda bias.
But
Don't lie.
Alex Taru goes to bump a Brisbane Lions VFL player, and it's very clearly high contact because you cannot argue that does not look like a concussed player.
Yeah.
There is no other footage that we have access to, unfortunately, because we
We
obviously
have
have
zero access.
Zero access.
That's how it goes here.
Yes, yes. But it has been graded as careless conduct, severe impact, and high contact, right? And that was given 4 weeks. You know what's crazy? Connor Nash was given intentional conduct, severe impact, and high contact. Guess what that was given? 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So whether it was intentional or not makes no difference, apparently.
Which feels very strange because
Which
if you're
feels very
intending to hurt
strange.
someone, you'd imagine that gets punished more than someone who isn't intending to hurt someone.
One would think so. The grading for this to me is how forceful was the actual hit compared to momentum of the players, because the Brisbane player is the one coming into Taru, whereas Taru makes a late jump towards him.
I was going to say he does put a shoulder down.
Yeah. Right? So you see he doesn't protect himself well enough after the ball doesn't hit him, after he doesn't collect the ball. So you can see here the ball gets spilled out and he just walks into Taru, basically.
Yeah.
So for Taru, he has to make contact there. He doesn't protect himself. He goes to really push off the other player. And the other argument is it high contact? It looks like he's concussed, but we don't actually know the severity of the impact. It could have been head-on-head collision, because to me, the arm impact looks to be more chest. That's the issue, because he goes down and then comes up. So I don't know how much head contact it really is. We'll argue tonight at the tribunal because they're challenging it, which they should. But I find it very interesting that this was graded as 4 weeks, and the same one as Connor Nash and the same one as Paul Curtis, whereas Curtis was given 3 weeks for something he couldn't control as well, compared to Nash getting 4 weeks that she should have done better in that situation. This one's very interesting, and I will really want to see how they grade this at the tribunal.
Beauty. And do you have any more Behm tribunal tasks?
We still got 2 more to go through.
Oh,
This one's from the North Melbourne Port game, and Paul Curtis takes Josh Sin to ground, and it's a very hard one to look at, because not only does Sin take his knees to ground to try get the push in the back free kick, but Paul Curtis also doesn't really provide a duty of care.
he doesn't provide the duty
At
of
all.
care, which is the problem.
He's taken both hands, pinned them, so he cannot protect himself when driving into the ground, which is very much what the AFL have changed into the MRO tribunal systems, where if you do not provide a duty of care, if you do not allow them to brace for contact, then you are going to get pinned. They have challenged this. It has been graded as careless conduct, severe impact, and high contact. And I don't think you can argue against this.
That's my problem, is I think this is just not one that they can argue with, as we have managed to find ourselves on the round 8 preview.
Yeah,
Bit early,
jeez.
mate. Bit early.
Bit early.
But this one in particular, I have seen a lot of North fans call it soft. I don't think it's soft.
It's not soft.
I think it's just a representation of where the game's at the moment.
Correct.
What they're trying to stamp out. It's a bit of an unfortunate one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't imagine that his... Wow, producer Ethan really wants to go home.
Someone's schizoing right now.
I just believe that while he clearly doesn't have the intention behind just putting his head to the ground, what the AFL has clearly shown is I don't want to see that kind of impact at all in a tackle.
Yeah.
So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I don't see him getting off this
We
one.
might need to give the TP a rest for now.
Yeah,
It's not looking very
He's
good.
having a bit of a struggle here, but it's all right. Yeah, I think it's going to stand. I think it's going to stand as 3, unfortunately.
Yeah, the only thing that the problem with this one is it's either 3 weeks or 0. He either gets off because Sin initiated the contact, or he gets 3 weeks because he didn't provide a duty of care. There's no argument that you can make this is 1, 2, or 3 weeks because they haven't been able to provide the system where you can grade separately.
Yeah.
That's the issue I have with this one. And then the last one that we'll talk about is Jack Ginnivan. This is a kicking fine that he was given from 6.25k down to 3.75. You can see him kicking at Jack Darling, I believe it is. This was graded as
Jack
intentional.
Darling?
Was it? Or Jack Graham?
I was
Jack
gonna say, he
Graham,
plays for North
yeah.
now.
Wrong Jacks. It was graded as intentional conduct, low impact, and body contact. Body contact. Again, what am I?
You talk too much, bro. You talk too much.
Yeah, I know. This one's very interesting. I found this very suspendable, in my opinion, because you look at it, it is clearly intentional. He is clearly trying to hurt the player. And if this is not tripping, this is not providing a duty of care to the player. This is clearly trying to harm the player. And if you look at the first one, look where he's trying to kick.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It is in a seriously dangerous position. Studs up and everything. This is a red card in soccer. How are you not punishing this harder?
We don't play soccer, though. Come on now.
If you get a red card in soccer, you should be getting weeks in AFL pretty much. Like that's the way I see it.
My thinking is what kind of precedent, because this would be a one-off. This would be very much a one-off, so I don't imagine it sets much of a precedent.
Okay, you say it's a one-off. There were 5 different tripping offences.
No.
where they got
This
fined.
particular, like, kicking from the ground.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Kicking from the ground. This is a one-off type thing. We don't see this very often.
No.
So I would not be mad at all with them stamping out. But I'd imagine, what does that look like then for the future? Because you could argue, if he gets off, you could argue it one way. If he gets a week, I think, would we say a week is the max for something like this?
I'd say 2 weeks.
If he gets 2 weeks, what does that look like for regular tripping offences?
Well, tripping and kicking are 2 separate things, right? Tripping is a dangerous thing, obviously.
But would they grade it in the same?
I don't like the grading system right now. I don't think you can make any changes to it because you can't implement something where you can't even make good gradings based off of the incidents they've tried to, right?
Yeah.
If we're arguing that the the conduct, impact, and contact isn't working, why would you then try to implement something else to it, right? It just doesn't make sense that if he actually made contact to the private groin area of Jack Graham, this will be a seriously harsher punishment.
Yeah,
I
no,
believe.
absolutely.
And if you're only getting fined for it, the problem is, does it invite more players to do it where they see, if I'm on the ground, I can start kicking players and I can get away with it?
I still think
Similar
it's a
to the
one-off.
push in the
I still
back.
think it's a one-off. I don't think, because
We'll have to see.
Yeah, I know we'll have to see. If it's only just the fine, I think it'll be okay. I don't imagine people are going to go out trying to kick people now, but yeah, I guess it's just one to look out for. Because if we see it again, then we'll know that it set something up.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's Behm's TT wrapped up for another week.
Beautiful.
We got through it eventually.
Yeah, it was a lot going on. He
Yes.
was very riled up this week. He even brought in some VFL. So We're now going to move on to something I haven't done too much research in the meantime since we brought this up.
I've been writing it as we speak.
Yeah, fantastic. We're going to have a look at our 10 best ruckmen so far for the season.
It's a position that has been brought into question a lot due to the draconian St Kilda offer.
But you always,
because
ruckman's effectiveness is always a debatable kind of
correct
thing because you need to think yourself. Tristan Sherry did so well last year in terms of stats and had himself a career year in that term. But how effective was his ruck work? How much did it work in getting the team clearances compared to a Rowan Marshall, compared to a Max Gorn, compared to a Brodie Grundy last year? Going to be interesting to see what we look at this time.
Yep. Well, I'll start. We'll go from 10 to 1.
Yep.
Because I believe we're doing 10 ruckmen.
Yep.
I got the memo on that one. Good. And number 10. Rowan Marshall, the very own St Kilda
Really?
ruckman.
All the way at 10?
I think he's had two good weeks, one okay week, and 3 bad weeks. That's the way I've put it. I don't think he's better than any of the 9. I put him above. He's had better games than some of them, but his floor has been really poor this year. Part of that is fitness. He just hasn't had the off-season and the preseason to be able to get fully fit and perform straight into this year. But again, he hasn't been fully fit. And the midfield at his feet also isn't working very well, which sort of takes into it because his effectiveness isn't going to be as shown when their midfield is going to get dominated.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now. The one that comes to mind for 10 for me is the Nank. Toby. I think he is definitely a formidable ruckman. I would honestly put Rowan Marshall above Nank and a lot of other ruckmen right now. Maybe you could. I do see your argument. His floor has been poor. We've seen that. I think against the Dogs is the most recognisable one for me.
Yeah.
But I think what he can bring at his best, and he has shown his best at plenty of times so far this season, puts him a bit higher than some of these more standard ruckmen. I think the ruckmen who can be a bit more all around, get themselves involved in the play their role, whatever their role may be, whether it's becoming a linking player, whether it's an intercept marker, like the likes of Gorn. Those players who have more than just be a big body, ones I value a bit more, and I think play better just in general. Their general play comes off better. So I put Nank in that 10 spot because he's a very, very good one-dimensional ruckman.
Yeah, I've got him at 9, so nothing really changes.
Yeah.
I just think he's had a better floor than what Marshall has this season.
Yep.
That's like, he's been a great leader for Richmond. I don't think he can come into question with that whatsoever this year.
Easy. Next up, I am going to go with... Oh, it's very, very tough. Very, very tough to kind of work this one out. I'm kind of tempted to go Lloyd Meek.
At 9.
At 9.
Okay.
Definitely could be higher
Yeah.
because of how well Hawthorn have played and how well he's kind of helped out his midfield.
Yep. Okay.
I think he is still, though, one of those one-dimensional ruckmen.
Yeah. He's one-dimensional, but at the same time, I think
he's really good at that dimension. Yeah.
Like he can provide some forward option, but he's not getting back a lot to intercept mark and help out the defense. He provides some around the groundwork, but he's not like a Tim English or Rowan Marshall or Max Gorn in that level.
Yep.
So I just think he's great around the stoppage. He provides a lot for that Hawthorn team, and he will continue without Will Day and without Nash and stuff. But again, as you said, he is a little bit one-dimensional with his play, which is why I have him at 8.
Yeah, completely fair. I have at 8. Man, you're making this tough. I can't keep up with all of this. My 8, I'm going to go Riley O'Brien.
Okay. I actually don't have him in my list at all.
That's completely fair. I think Riley O'Brien at the moment, again, one-dimensional, but he's doing his job quite well. There's been the shaky game here and there, but I don't think that's his fault.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's the one-dimension type thing that I just keep coming back to. Players who you can rely on getting ruck work happening, but you can't do much elsewhere. No. And so I'm even tempted to put him above. I may actually even put him, Lloyd Meek, over Riley O'Brien. I'd give Riley O'Brien the 9 and Lloyd Meek the 8.
Yeah, the way I see it is I think that O'Brien hasn't had any impact with the ball in his hands whatsoever, whereas Meek has.
Yeah.
He's been able to get on the scoreboard occasionally as well.
Yeah, so I think, scratch 9, put him at 8, Riley O'Brien 9.
Fair. 7, I have Brodie Grundy.
Mm-hmm.
I think He's had some really good games this year. Started in the first couple of weeks a bit slow though, which is where he's not in the top 5 for me. But I just think that as Sydney continues to struggle, he's been one that hasn't had a bad week in a few weeks, whereas it feels like every Sydney player has over the last few weeks. He's been one that's been very consistent in his play.
Yeah, I'm going to give it to him as well. I think Brodie Grundy, I haven't paid as much attention to him as I'd like, but he is one of those ones can get around the ground, but I think he's starting to get a little bit slower with his play, and obviously Sydney's struggles have made it hard to put him up there. If he was one of their standouts, I'd maybe put him a bit higher, but I just feel like, Grundy at the moment is still up there in terms of competition talent, but nowhere near his best days.
No, fair enough. At 6, I've got Jordan Sweet.
I was gonna ask about Jordan Sweet and where you put him because he's had some good games.
Yeah, I rate him very highly. He is similar to a De Koning who will feature in this list in terms of his around the ground work. He's almost like a bigger midfielder. He's a very skilled player. He moves around the ground really, really well. He just hasn't, to me, provided that forward or back connection properly. Like you've seen from all the really good ruckmen, they're either really good on the scoreboard or they get back and protect their defense. He's done a little bit of both, but not enough of either. But I think now that the power midfield is really getting to start moving with Wines, Drew, Butters and Horne-Francis all there together, I think he has really fed them extremely well so far this year.
I was going to give it to Timmy English.
Okay. I don't have English in my list at all.
That's surprising to me. Because I think he still offers a really, really good amount of around-the-ground coverage.
I'm strictly doing it based off of these 7 games this year.
That's fair.
Strictly, right?
That's completely
So not
fair.
taking into effect anything else. I think he's had max 2 good weeks. To me, only 1 really strong week, which was this week.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been that good all year at all.
Okay.
I think that's where my argument comes from. I just think he needs to continue this, and then maybe at round 12, if we want to do this again, he can make a list. But I just don't see it.
I just give him a lot of credit for sticking so hard at it despite all the injuries and working with the midfield that he's got.
He's got the best midfield.
Well,
arguably.
he's got it now.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't have it to start.
But again, that's an argument. He should have stepped up when he hasn't.
Yeah, I guess that's another way you could look at it. But I still very much highly value Tim English.
Yeah. At 5, I've got Jared Witts.
I was going to put Witsy at 5 as well.
Have you?
Yeah, I'll put Witsy at 5.
Okay. Yeah. I think that the leadership he's provided to Gold Coast, the impact he has in the stoppage, he's not great around the ground, but he just sits there and becomes a target, and that's what you need. He just is a fantastic leader. He's really smart as a footballer as well, and he just makes it so hard for the opposition ruck to be able to get his own midfield involved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. You have a look. I mean, he's got a fantastic midfield to work with. We know that for sure. But he provides that bit of a leadership as well. He was captain, but he still obviously, even though he doesn't have the C anymore, he will still be one of those guys that players look to for leadership and guidance. And I think he's done a very good job at finally getting Gold Coast over the hump, helping at least with that.
Yeah.
Who have you got at 4?
4, I've got Darcy Cameron.
Interesting. I was going to put Tristan Sherry. Tristan has had an okay start to his season so far.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's anything fantastic. I don't think he's had a fantastic game just yet. There's been games where he's looked really good.
I thought he was really good this weekend.
You could argue that. I still think he's kind of got a bit of that habit. I try to look at Sherry as critically as possible.
Yeah.
I think still a lot of what he does is very in the moment to neutral outcomes, right? So quick clearances, cool, but they go to contested and outnumbered possessions or tap downs to players for tackles, stuff like that. So as much as he is effective and as good as he can be at his best, Sherry still feels like one of those players who needs to put more of his work to the advantage of his teammates rather than just to himself, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'd give him 4.
Yeah. The reason I've got Cameron at 4 is because when I mentioned Ruckman being able to provide forward impact or defensive impact, he has been the best Ruckman this year at defensive impact. I think that he's averaging almost 2 intercept marks a game as a Ruckman, which is fantastic. He gets back and he allows Darcy Moore to be able to come loose. He allows Jeremy Howe, to be able to play loose. And he's doing that, and that's what's allowed Collingwood to be so solid defensively.
Yep.
He's also been really solid at stoppages this year, and he's been that all throughout. He's now providing that defensive coverage that they've needed without what's his name? Nathan Murphy. What's his name? Since that, they haven't had that defensive coverage. He's providing it now.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that's a really, really underrated thing about... Because I've got actually Cameron Hire.
Yeah.
I've got Cameron Hire here.
Mm-hmm.
I am putting in this number 3 spot, I'm putting Tom de Koning.
Okay. I've got Cherry, my 3. Tristan Cherry. I think, yeah, as you said, the contest is his strength. It is 100%. He's been able to hit the goals occasionally as well this year.
No, that's always
which is something he's now starting to get into his game. Whether we can see that a bit more often would be a fantastic thing for him to provide. But again, if he could bring that defensive pressure that a couple of other ruckmen are doing, that would make your defense even more solid than what it already could be with the talent you can get there. Like Combin, Logue, Core, there's still some talent there. You just haven't found it to be able to mesh together yet. I think if he provides that, it'll really help some of your interceptors get their game going. But as I said, the contest he's providing, he's a really solid tackler, and he just doesn't allow midfielders to be able to get a burst as often as some other ruckmen do.
Yeah. My reasoning for Tom de Koning, I'm also starting to realise that there's one player that I originally was going to put up here, but I've completely spaced out. So Rowan Marshall is also not on this list. I would actually put him on this list if I could. I'd switch him out for someone. But I can't think of it right now. Again, this is so unorganised. Tom de Koning, number 3. I have got him there purely based off of the fact that Carlton as a team, sure, it doesn't impact how he plays, but there's been a lot of times where his play also comes off sloppy too. Obviously, he's all over it, and it's why people and teams like St Kilda want to pick him up, because in a clean and in a really, really good environment, in the sense that players are playing at their best, skills are on point, whatever it may be, Tom de Koning really thrives because he gives them so much opportunity everywhere around the ground, everywhere. And so that's why he's so valuable right now. He's not just a ruck who can also get on the scoreboard or a ruck who can go back and take intercept marks. He is a ruck who can do a little bit of everything. And that's why he's so valuable right now. So that's why I've got him at 3, though. I've got him at 2. My 2 is Cameron.
Yeah. Fair.
Cameron has had a fantastic season so far. He has been, like you said, defensively, he has played a key defensive role as well as a ruck. I mentioned how much I love all-arounders, but when you've been playing damn near elite for a position you are not playing, that's
crazy.
really, really positive.
Yeah.
And Collingwood have absolutely thrived with him. You're seeing how good of a stretch of play they're going on so far, and Cameron is a massive reason for that.
He's so crucial to how they play defensively and
Absolutely.
how they structure up.
Absolutely. And so that's why I've put him so high up there.
Yeah, de Koning for me at 2 is because, as you said, he provides defensive pressure. He provides offensive impact with the way he's able to grab the ball out of the ruck. But he also gets around the ground and gets involved with how they link up now. And like as I said with Sweet, he's almost like an extra midfielder. Tom de Koning is an extra midfielder.
Yeah. And then our 1, we both got Maxi.
Yeah. He could be on his way for 8 All-Australian nods, which is crazy to say. When you're talking about defensive pressure, he's almost impenetrable. He provides occasional goals here and there as well. Obviously, still can't kick in front of goal in set shots, but, can't take
50
everything.
50 plus, 50 out. He's pretty bang on, to be fair.
Very true. It's so hard to go past him. He's just so impactful, even for this Melbourne team.
He is potentially the most impactful Melbourne player right now.
Oh, for Melbourne, yes. Arguably, ruckman of all time, also yes, I'd say.
Yeah, you could argue that. That'd be another thing entirely. And that'd be actually quite cool for a bit of a discussion. But that is ranking the 10 best ruckmen in the AFL so far. Very rushed. And like I said, I'd put Rowan Marshall in there somewhere because I've completely forgotten him.
Outrageous from you. How dare you? No, I'm joking.
Who did I put at 10?
You put Nank at 10.
Nank at 10. Yeah, sorry, Nank, you're out. Yeah, sorry, Nank. My bad, bro. Marshall can take 10.
Fair enough. Okay.
No argument for me.
I don't care.
Here we go. This is our main headliner of the week. You could argue that it is the Q Clash. I know some people could probably see that, as Brisbane and Gold Coast are both high up on the ladder, while Geelong sit at 7 compared to Pies 1. But we think the moment, the occasion, you could definitely argue for the Pies and the Cats. What do you think will create a winner in this matchup?
I mentioned, obviously, with Geelong, their midfield is more outside, and Collingwood's at the moment has been a good mix of both. I see, again, if Collingwood can get the damage on the inside against Geelong, they'll struggle to get the ball movement going on the outside. We will see a good response from Geelong, however. I think Collingwood, after a really long stretch of high-level performances, could potentially be on the fade a little bit. That's my concern. I'm assuming you get Darcy Moore back for this game as well.
If he's off concussion?
Yeah. Well, no, it hasn't been concussion. It was vertigo from a knock in the ear.
Yeah.
So that's the only concern. Do they get Darcy Moore back? I'd suggest yes. But
He'd definitely be helpful if he does come back.
Do I see Collingwood winning this? I think their forwards could struggle against a very solid Geelong backline.
That was my original thought because don't they have another forward out?
Yeah, I think
was it
McStay's out
McStay
now.
or Membry?
It's McStay, so it'll be the forward line will be Cox, Mychek, and Membry. Doesn't look very good.
I don't know how that kind of goes.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got your small guys, and they're going to have to play out of their skin because Geelong's backline, Connor O'Sullivan. I'm going to watch him for the rest of his career. I'm going to keep an eye out on him. He has been so good.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell that number 14 jersey at Geelong is like, put a halo around that thing or something. Like, preserve that jersey number. Make sure that if you're giving it to someone, they show every single sign of Joel Selwood. Because the fact that they've passed it on from Selwood to him just feels like movie magic. It feels like movie magic.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
I could see this going Cats' way. I really am tempted to tip Cats here, despite Collingwood being so good as of late. And I always like to talk individuals at the moment when it comes to the Pies because Dacos has been playing out of it. Both Dacoses have been playing out of their skin at the moment. You look towards the forward line, and despite the injuries, they have been pretty all right. I think Mychek has been a bit on the back end. Cox is Cox. We know kind of how he goes. Membry's been okay. Again, their forward line isn't great, but then I look at the Jamie Elliott's, the Bobby Hills. If they have one of their big games, they could absolutely be due for one. I think a lot of what they score and what they put on the scoreboard could come from the midfield, though, and the wings. Yeah. Bo McCreary, I think, is one to look out for in this one.
For me, it's Jordan De Goey. I see him as a game breaker. You look at what Dangerfield did last week in the final quarter against Carlton. If they can repeat that, which I think they will, I think that they'll be able to get to the Pies. I think they'll be able to break through their defense and their structure. And they don't like to bomb it long, which is where Collingwood like to suit themselves and be able to, as you said, get the Cameron impact defensively.
Yeah.
Geelong don't like to play that way, which is where I see them winning. I think they'll get 11-point margin, but it's a very tough one to predict.
Yeah, very. I'm going to go Cats by a single goal. 6 points for the Cats. All right.
It's a tough game.
Yeah, it's a big game. Going to be so many exciting matchups with that one too. But let's move. And just before we wrap up, we're going to have a look at the entire round 8. So far, we've got Essendon North. Do I tip North? Come on, tell me.
I am. I'm tipping North.
Okay, I'm tipping North too. I'm going off of you for this one because you've been so spot on with tips, but I don't have any faith in my team. So if you've got faith, I've got faith.
Okay, so the way I look at it, Essendon's backline hasn't been very strong. Reed's been better. Mackay's been a bit more solid, but I just don't trust it fully yet. I don't see Likey having a solid opponent on him whatsoever. And then you look at their forward line, Peter Wright, Langford, Caddy, haven't fired fully yet aside from that West Coast game.
But my God, would that not be the perfect team for them to kick 10 each or something stupid?
That's the problem. They could easily kick 10 together, but at the same time, there's no Curtis this week. So do North Smalls able to get the job? I think your midfield gets over the top of North's midfield. I think it's a huge bounce back week.
Essendon's midfield? We get over Essendon's midfield?
Yes,
yeah,
that's my point.
Yep.
I think you win by 19. That's the way I put it. I think your midfield is just so much better.
I reckon we win by 1 because I can't be that confident. Saints versus Dockers now. Friday night at Marvel.
Yeah.
We get the primetime games. Look at that. Our teams are going big time. Saints versus Dockers. Who do you think is going to take this one?
Bounce back, bounce back.
Yeah,
bounce back.
I actually, without even, glazing off of you, Saints. I think Saints can take this one.
Major pause.
I've had some very, very interesting moments this podcast. I think Saints take it. Bounce back is absolutely possible. We've seen how good they play at Marvel.
Yeah, well, aside from the last 2 weeks, but I also
Oh,
say,
yeah, no, that is true. I forgot they played at Marvel, those ones, yeah.
The Dockers also had their best ball movement and contested game, and I see that not being able to sustain again against us off of a bounce back of a Ross line spray this week. In terms of a margin, though, I'll go 25. I think we don't normally play close games against Fremantle, so
I'll say
20. It normally doesn't really stray out too far or stay close at all.
Yeah, that's all good. Saturday at Mars, Dogs versus Port. What a strange matchup this one is.
Very interesting.
Obviously, Dogs always get the Ballarat game, it feels like, but
yeah.
Dogs versus Port. Oh, do you reckon Port have what it takes to show a better showing against the Dogs than they did against North?
I think it's an interesting game because you look at the midfield, it's very close. You look at the rucks, it's a close battle. You look at the keys then, and that's something that could really stand out. How's Leah and Radigalee going to go against probably Rory Lobb and Aaron Norton? That's really solid matchups there. How's the Port Smalls going to go against the Bulldogs Smalls? Do you want to play Bontempelli more forward this week?
Yeah, the matchups could. I think if Bont goes forward, the matchups suit the Dogs more. But I think they're dead even if Bont spends more time in the midfield. Honestly, I think just due to the fact that Bont has been playing more forward due to him coming back from injury, is actually going to play to the Dogs' benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've also seen a big few weeks from Port Adelaide. Hawthorn, Sydney, and now North Melbourne in a very congested and physically and mentally draining week.
Strange game, honestly.
So I see the Dogs having the advantage here. I also see that the Port forwards aren't necessarily going to get an advantage. Do we see Liam Jones back is going to be interesting? But again, I just don't see that their forwards are going to be able to have a huge impact against this really strong Dogs team at the moment.
Yep. I'm going to go Dogs by 15.
Okay. I see that. I probably go on a closer game and go Dogs by 3.
Fair.
I think this is going to be a really good game.
Crows versus Blues, Adelaide Oval.
This, to me, depends on who comes in and who comes out for the two teams. Whether we see Chera get off, Silvani won't play this week, Zach Williams won't play this week, but
neither will Riley Thilthorpe.
He won't. He definitely won't.
Oh, I thought that had been confirmed.
I don't know.
Hairline fracture, you'd think he wouldn't be.
You would think. So
we'll see how it turns out. Yeah. But even then, I'd say he may have some struggles. We'll see how that turns out. Mm-hmm. But Fogg coming back in.
Correct. It's a really tough game because you look at the Crows at home, really tough team to beat there. But the Blues are in a lot better form.
Honestly, with the way this season has been going, I'm going Crows because teams in form when you think they're going to keep their form going, that's when they lose it.
Yeah.
So I'm going Crows in this one by 30.
Crows by, wow. To me, I still think Carlton are the better team.
But the thing is, I can see that. I understand that completely.
I also think without Thilthorpe, you've got Weeder and Haynes and McGovern all having really good games. There's not too much need for another tall replacing Silvani. And I just think that their talls are going to absolutely tear Adelaide apart. And their midfield has been on fire at the moment. Yeah. So I see them winning by, I'll go 22 points. I think it's going to be
a big margin of difference here. We've been through Pies and Cats. Obviously, we both went Cats. Let's look at Eagles versus D's at Optus Stadium. Do the Eagles get their first one of the season?
I so hope so.
You want them to get it?
Yes.
I thought you wanted a team to go winless.
No, I never wanted a team to go winless, ever.
I thought it was Melbourne you wanted to go winless.
I originally wanted Essendon to go winless, but you know.
Of course. Eagles versus D's, though. With the way the D's played, they play smart. But they don't seem to have the physical edge at the moment. They don't seem to be putting as much work in as the likes of Richmond. Obviously, the Smarts the Smarts. I definitely don't have Smarts. Smart play beat the rough and tumble play of Richmond. I think a similar thing's going to happen here, but I still see it going the Eagles.
You look at the ruck matchup, and you got Gawn versus Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn was really poor on the weekend. Mm-hmm. We will probably see something similar happen this week. But then you got a D's forward line that is not really firing against solid opponents.
Eagles are going to have to look out for Cozzy, though, because Cozzy did have that 100%. Big game.
Tom Cole or Liam Duggan probably goes to him. Maybe you put Bailey Hoff back there, and he goes to him. But McGovern against that D's forward line is absolute butter for me. That's just cleaning up everything. And I have Eagles winning this. Yes, you can call me an absolute D's hater, but they've got to get it on the board against someone.
Yeah.
They has to be at home as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I've said Eagles as well here. I'm gonna go by 10 points.
I got Eagles by 9. Can't really fault.
I'm gonna push us for time here because we are getting a bit out of control with the time. Sunday at the SCG, Swans versus Giants. We've got the Battle of the Bridge. Who do you think is taking this one?
Both teams off of losses. Not great performances from either of them. At home, Sydney, I can't go past them at the moment. I don't rate GWS as much as everyone. I don't think that their ball movement has been that good. I don't think that their small forwards have had the impact they want. At the same time, I can't see them stopping Hogan or Green at the moment. So I'm really tossing up.
I'd agree with you if it wasn't for the fact that Port beat Sydney at the SCG. So I'm going to go Giants as well. I'm going Giants by 20.
I'll go Swans by the exact same margin.
Hawks versus Tigers. God, if this turns out to be a close game, I'll be shocked. Hawks by 50.
Hawks by 50. Okay. Yeah, pretty much the same. I can't. I'll go by 80. Fuck it. I'll just go. I'll go balls to the wall. I'll go absolutely balls.
And then we got Lions Suns, who again was the other big matchup. I wish we could talk about it more, but unfortunately we are short for time. Lions versus Suns. Who do you think takes it at the Gabba?
Yeah, at the Gabba again. Lions have performed really well, but do the Suns make a statement? That's my question. I don't know. That's the issue.
Lions have shown signs of weakness. They have lost before to solid teams at the Gabba. I'm going to say Suns take it by 10.
I'll go same. I'll go Suns. I think you look at a win to show that you're there.
Yep.
Show that you're up
show
for
that
contention.
Richmond was a fluke, honestly.
Correct.
Show that Richmond was just young, hungry fluke.
I don't think they were able to stop Ben King either. Harris Andrews doesn't want to play on them. Jack Payne was out on the weekend. Saints weren't able to target it, but I think now Ben King will be able to have an absolute huge game.
Fantastic.
And I'll go by 17.
Beautiful. That is the preview for round 8, and that is once again another episode of Zero Access Footy. We've hit 10 episodes. That is 10 officially done and dusted. We are big time. We've somehow kept this going. We haven't all crashed out on each other. But of course, if you want to keep us going,
we might have.
We've definitely crashed out on multiple occasions, especially producer Ethan. The things he says. Nonetheless, I appreciate you all tuning in to Zero Access Footy episode 10. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to Zero Access Footy if you are watching over on YouTube. Of course, be sure to follow us over on Instagram and TikTok if you want to see more short form action from us. And of course, if you can only listen to us in a visual form, in a audio form, Spotify is your place to go. Rate us 5 stars over there. And once again, I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode. Behm, is there anything you want to say to the audience listening?
Nope.
Okay, he doesn't like you. I'll see you all in...
I don't like you.
No, bro, come on now. I'll see you all
Shut
in the
yourself up
next...
way too
I'll
fast.
see you all in the next episode of Zero Access Footy.
Homeless caveman.
Of Crash Out Access Footy. See you all later.